two things I just want to quickly talk about that I've watched in the last few weeks. It's Paranormal, which is an Egyptian horror series that's on Netflix. Now, I love horror and I love genre, and I'm so pleased to see that the Middle East is now producing more horror output. So this is really good. It's by filmmaker Salama. Did very well. The set pieces are wonderful. It's set in 1970s Egypt. The production values are very high. It's not quite clear what it's about so far. I've only watched 2 episodes, and each one contains different types of supernatural beings, and I think there will be a story arc that links all the episodes together. The scary bits are quite scary. There is a little bit, and so Chris had to point this out to me because for me it was a given because it's an Egyptian TV series.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got quite melodramatic music. So he was like, why is there like Sunset Beach type symphony orchestras as soon as anything happens? And I was like, well, that's because it's Egyptian. So you lose a little bit of the tension, but that's fine. I think my biggest bugbear, which really takes you out of the atmosphere, is a really, really ropey Scottish accent by the lead woman in it. It's set in Egypt. He's and in the 70s, as I said. And arrives Maggie, a Scottish woman he'd met in Edinburgh years ago, and presumably they've had a sort of fling and they'd fallen for each other, and now he's engaged to someone else. This Maggie's meant to be Scottish, like 100% Scottish, but she happens to have learnt Arabic and speaks a bit of Arabic. She is played by a Lebanese actress, which it's fine, why not? But she cannot do a Scottish accent, and I kind of
really?
feel
What does it sound like?
Chris and I just turned to each other and we thought, is she Irish? Is she Canadian? What's the deal there? What's going on? So he keeps making funny Jerry Adams impressions every time she speaks. It's really distracting. It's like a mishmash of Australian, Texan, Irish. But to be fair, no one seems to have picked up on it. I think the majorly Arab audience of the show doesn't seem to give a shit. So,
or they probably don't notice, because years ago I used to watch this film Muriel's Wedding. I don't know if you remember that from the 90s. And then later I met these Australians and they were highly critical about how bad the accents were. And I was like, what would I know about an Australian accent? Come on now.
Hang on, who's not Australian in it?
Huh?
Isn't Toni Collette Australian?
They said the accents were bad, so I don't know.
Whoops.
But an even better analogy, the play The Color Purple came to London, and I went with my American friend to watch it, and again, it's distracting is the word for it. Like, we couldn't even focus on the story because the accents made the characters unbelievable, and we were just like, what is this? And everyone else there was saying how much in love they were with it. I'm like, but what about the accents? That's not throwing you off? And they had no idea what we were talking about. It's like, okay. But it was really horrific. And my friend had seen it with what's the singer's name? Fantasia. And apparently it was, like one of those once in a lifetime Whitney Houston concert like experiences. And she was just so distraught. She was just like, I can't believe I have to sit through this. And we were both too cheap to leave, so it's like we just stayed and complained and grumbled. But yeah, I know what you mean. That's to say, when you do have an accent, it's something about it where it makes it, maybe it's like that element of film where you have to buy into the world of make-believe on some level, and that just keeps you from wanting to even open the door to that. It's like, look, you've ruined it for me now. And
two problems with that is the first one, she's a major character, so you could overlook it if she hadn't been a major character. The second problem, it's meant to be a horror series, so you're meant to get really sucked in and to imbibe the atmosphere. What's the phrase? Credit given for where credit's due, or whatever it is. But because she plays a Scottish woman who speaks Arabic, her Arabic has to have a foreign accent. And she does that really well. I assume she grew up in Lebanon, so I assume her Arabic's native. And she manages to speak Arabic with quite a strong, believable foreign accent. So that works. It's just the Scottish bit that doesn't.
That's an interesting one, isn't it, though? That's quite a skill to be able to do that.
Yeah. So I should, and she's not a bad actress at all, so I don't want it to be a reflection on her acting ability. It's literally just the fact that she's meant to do the Scottish accent, which doesn't quite work. Now maybe I don't know, I find it hard to believe that they just couldn't find an actress that could do both, but maybe they didn't.
But she's a home
The
wrecker, though, right? Because she's there to
in the
break
film,
up his
well, I don't know. I've only
impending
seen 2
marriage.
episodes,
Because
so she
otherwise, why would
might
she
end
be
up
there?
being.
I hear people do
Oh,
that
so
BS. Well, we've been through so much. We have to at least be friends. Oh, stop. You know you're trying to ruin.
so you think they cast her specifically so she's unlikable from the start?
Well, because she is ultimately, right? I mean, you can't mean any good if you're an ex showing up and the person is going to get married. It's like, because I hate romantic comedies. The only one I've ever liked, ever, was My Best Friend's Wedding. And only because that was the premise and they didn't get together at the end. Because he was just like, no, like, we're
Yeah.
friends, but even though it was clear to everyone his marriage wasn't going to work out, but that wasn't the point, because that's never the point.
Well, yeah. I mean, you already sympathise with his fiancée, who comes across as a very kind, loving, generous woman. The other thing that's very distracting. So there's the accent, and there's the wig. She's got a bright orange Lego man wig that just doesn't move. And I'll tell you a very accurate comparison. Do you know Chris Lilly? Do you know who he is?
I don't know.
He's an Australian comedian. He's very controversial now.
Oh, why is he controversial?
I have to...
Or maybe I'll Google it while you say, I mean, if you don't want to spend time.
There's been accusations that his characters are racist or reductive, or...
I don't know. When they call out racism in Australia, it's got to be pretty bad.
It's
just watch
his stuff. His first series was Summer Heights High, and there's a character called Jamay. He mocks all these people, so he's excellent at dressing up and playing different characters, and he plays this private school girl who's called
funny.
Jamay, and she's got this weird hair that half falls on her face that she keeps flicking, and it's really solid, and the wig just looks like that in that series. But aside from that, if you can push through, it's very enjoyable, and it's just so nice having an Arab series that's horror based and using all the usual horror tropes. It's great. So that's on Netflix, and I'm gonna watch the rest in the coming days. The